prayers, I will call on the Deputy Leader of the Opposition to say prayers.
Morning, members. Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations for the glory of thy name and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of our islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex-officio members, and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's name prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. May the Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace now and always. Amen.
Seated.
Administration of oaths or affirmations.
None.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of messages and announcements.
Thank you. Honorable members, I rise to briefly recognize a milestone in my life, as it is my 35th anniversary in this honorable house. 35 years ago, when I woke up this morning, if I slept, I was an elected member. I was then the youngest member. The elected member for Northside was a new member same time. But he went home and left me at some point. As the longest serving member and now the presiding officer of this Legislative Assembly, and with an uninterrupted tenure, affords me the opportunity to appreciate and understand what have transpired over the years from my first election in November 1984 and taking my seat a week later. Let me first thank the people of my district, the District of West Bay. It was open voting at the time, the best system ever. And now particularly my latest constituents, West Bay West. But by extension, the people of the Cayman Islands, and indeed, Almighty God. I have many people throughout the island to thank for guidance, for good advice, some for the licks they gave me, and still do. All in all, it has been an experience, as you all are experiencing today. It has been a distinct honor and privilege to have served and continue to do so in the interest of the peoples of these islands, and particularly the people of West Bay all these many years. I am fortunate, some of you, the official members in particular, would know quite a bit of how this island has come these past 35 years. And I am fortunate over the 35 years to observe the transformative experiences and the evolution of this august body and the growth and maturity displayed by members of this House. In that vein, let me also mention that it is admirable and advisable that members continue to portray ethical and morally acceptable practices as we execute our functions in this honorable House, no matter what people say or how much we are accused. But let me say, therefore, utterances impugning improper motives and insinuating incendiary comments which can bring the members and the House into disrepute is unacceptable. And no, I will say yes, there are those that can point the finger at me and say, well, you were a young member and you did your share of beating up and you was here. But I would want to tell you that members here today have far, far less to complain about than what I had. When I came here, there was no labor law. There was a masters and servants law, the slave law. People worked for years, 40 years, had nothing. There was no pension, even though it's not what we want, or would say it's acceptable in this era of our life. But there were none. Housing, but nothing. Poor people, handicapped people had $25 per month. And you better know you were going to the right church too to get that. And knew the right people. And as I look around and we talk about this government and the next government, all governments have done extremely, extremely well to bring our islands to where we can produce a budget of $2 billion. It's left to you to argue what you're going to do with it. But just think of the overall. When I came here, the budget was maybe this thick. Civil servants ran the show. And thank God that they did. And thank God that they have matured to where I believe that our civil service is one of the best in the region, and I believe that we can look in the Commonwealth. Someone called me last night and said, I remember when you got elected. They told me I was the longest one right now in the Caribbean. I don't know. People like Mr. Edith Siaga has gone on, so I don't know. But someone called me and told me that last night. But I believe that our civil service is one of the best in the Commonwealth for 60-something thousand people. And no taxation. It is what the elected members and this honorable House agree on to bring money into this country. And we can beat up on one another, and we have, and we continue to do so. And I say that we are, as Caymanians, rowing over fire ants while elephants trample us. Think about it. Gerard said when he left here that Caymanians were like this. If they couldn't be the captain, they would go down in the ship and wreck the riggings, meaning wreck the engine. I'm sure, members, that we are not of that mindset. We want to see Cayman come ahead. And perhaps tomorrow morning, maybe shortly after I sit down, the papers will say, you know, he's a speaker, and he shouldn't even be talking, and he's biased. But understand this, I am the speaker. It's a new paradigm. I have a constituency, and 35 years today, I ain't going to go back and say, to tell my people in the District of West Bay West and the District of West Bay, which I feel responsible for. And I thank God for my colleagues who are capable members that can represent the different areas. But I ain't going to sit down and say, I didn't know. I'm learning. After 35 years? No. I can't do that. Not even after 4 years I did that. I brought 92 motions. 92 motions in my first 4 years. The member for Northside seconded most of them until they won him over and told him he couldn't do so anymore. But 92. And you think about pensions, the various members of government, ministers in EXCO and ministers now in cabinet, because most of you don't know the cabinet. We had nothing. You know how members have fought to get pensions in this country? The Premier was a member for it, for pensions. We had nothing. We had $25 per month to handicaps, and people are now quarreling because they can't get to CNAU every minute of the day. Yes, time has evolved. And I'm going to come to that because I said a few minutes, and Premier, I'm not going to apologize because this is 35 years. 35 years is a long time. But as I said, I am fortunate to observe the transformative experiences and evolutions of this august body. And don't let no one put this house down. Those that put us down, who write and criticize us, civil service, they criticize the civil service, they accuse the civil service, they accuse elected members. They have come from worse countries. And what they will tell you when I say this is, we say that because we know. No, they say that because they don't want to see me and you here. They'd rather it be somebody else. Not me and you. So if any of you think otherwise, think and think again. So, members, we have come a long ways. And as I said in beginning this aspect of what I'm saying, utterances, impugning, improper motives, and insinuating bad comments which can bring the members and yourselves into disrepute is unacceptable. And let me just say this, no member need to play Little White, because our people know us all. They know us all. No one need to play Little White and think it will go over my head as a speaker. I listen, I have to. When any member, and when they impugn members of this honorable house by slight-handed reference, especially in this environment, when some use a referendum as a campaign in added hope of securing their seat in the next election. I'm not going to tolerate that. I'm not going to tolerate it. And I sat here last week and listened. I'm not going to, and I said, let members have their say. When you say, I'm not for sale, you are impugning the conduct of members who are opposite you in whatever decision you are taking. Far too many families, and you listen carefully, far too many families of members of this honorable house has been damaged, hurt, sleep. I know at times you might not think this, when I slept on the floor because we were called and threatened in particular over the labor legislation in the 1980s, I pulled my mattress off the bed and put my 2 children on it, and we slept on the floor because we were threatened. I couldn't sleep on the bed. I was being that cautious. If you think the referendum is bad, check when we put the labor legislation in place. And that was our people and others in this country. So, I'm not going to tolerate for members and their families, for you all, to get to that point because of what members will say without proof, but by insinuations and other means. And when you say I'm not for sale, it leaves the impression that others are. Think of what we are doing. And you can say, well, you were young in here. Yes, I was. That's why I can say. We have long passed that at this point in time. Especially when I know you're lying. And I might not call you to order, but just remember that I've been here 35 years. I've been here 64 years, so I know. I know who's lying. I know. I need not belabor the point, as all members are aware and fully cognizant that despite freedom of expression, words do connote particular meanings which we need to be mindful of, so that collectively we will be worthy of the emulation we say we are to others. In reference to governance and representational politics, we ought to ensure that our constituents are the beneficiaries of our actions. And having said that, I have no doubt, and now you can say that I'm being political because I'm not going to lie, I am, that over my 35 years, these islands have moved progressively forward. No matter what some may complain about Cayman, Cayman has come a long way from the days when we had no electricity, some of us. I didn't get it until 1971. Imagine. I didn't get a paved road until 1985 to my place that I grew up. Look at what we are doing today. Look at the millions this government is spending and other governments have spent. Oh, they told me not to build West Bay Road. They want to see the sea. When you're driving, you shouldn't see the sea. You need to see the road. And no educational opportunities. But think of what we are doing today. And examine ourselves. We need not, as I say, row over fire ants while elephants are trampling us. We have moved forward, and I have faith and hope for the success of these islands and the advancement of our people. Yes, we complain. Look at some of them that are complaining. Honorable members, think when you speak. We blame others. We blame the church. We blame church pastors and Sunday school teachers. We blame the school. We blame the educational system. The neighbor is blamed. We say they are bad people. And we blame the government. Nobody seems to want to take the understanding, I have made myself this way too. Yes, there are some that circumstances and advancements have left behind. And I can tell you, you can pound your head all you want. You're not going to do much about that. We are all humans. We make those mistakes, and we learn, we hope, from them. But I'm telling you that the complaints that we are getting, you will be here for 35 years too, for some people, and you won't cure it. You will get blamed for it. So, As I said, politically, in my 35 years, this budget, and you can beat me up afterwards, I won't stop you, is a manifestation of not just this government, but something that evolved over the years to get to this point by good management of all governments. But this is the best budget with the most in it for 35 years. Honorable member, sit down. And it's a model of good governance in this country that I've seen in the last 50 years, not 35, 50 years, and I've been here that long. I remain confident that we, as elected representatives, will endeavor to act in the interests of the people we represent and serve, and have the interests of the Cayman Islands at the forefront of our minds in all our deliberations. Now, as the presiding officer of this House, I know that we all will continue to pursue our goals and agenda for the benefit of the people of these islands. I thank all members for the confidence reposed in me to be your speaker, even though at times I know you're not overjoyed by my rulings and you're not overjoyed by what I'm saying here now. But it's a fact. 35 years, my friends, is a long time. You who haven't spoke yet can speak now, and you will tell me how wrong I was to talk that the budget is the best in 50 years. But I've been here. I've sat in that gallery for that long. I've been in here for 35 years. It is the best one that I've seen. It's a culmination of good management for that long 35 years between the civil service and elected members. Thank God for where we're at. And if you think Bear Crow was wrong and bad, they'll tell me so later on.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Cayman Islands Government Labour Force Survey Report, Spring 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the Labour Force Survey Report, Spring 2019.
So ordered. Is the member speaking there, Tom?
Briefly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to present to this Honourable House the highlights of the results of the most recent Labour Force Survey that was conducted by the Economics and Statistics Office from the 10th of March to the 13th of April 2019. Mr. Speaker, the report provides an updated estimate of our island's population and a comprehensive presentation of the population's economic status as either employed, unemployed, or not in the labour force in categories of the population's demographic and educational profile. The concepts and methodologies used in the survey are derived from guidelines recommended by the International Labour Organization. However, these are adapted to local conditions to capture the characteristics of the Caymanian labour force as distinct from permanent residents and the non-Caymanian labour force. At the 30th of June 2019, the population of the Cayman Islands was estimated at 68,076 persons, of which 37,029, or 54.4%, are Caymanians, 6,653, or 9.8%, are permanent residents, and 24,394, or 35.8%, are non-Caymanians. The estimated total population represents an increase of 5.7% compared to the estimated population at the 30th of June 2018. The increase is traced largely to the 11.4% growth in the permanent residents population. The Caymanian population increased by 2.4%, non-Caymanian population by 9.4%. Mr. Speaker, the total labor force reached an estimated 47,622 persons at the 30th of June 2019, of which 21,512, or 45.2%, are Caymanians. From the survey results, the number of permanent residents with the right to work was estimated at 3,881, or 8.1% of the labor force, while 22,229 non-Caymanians, representing 46.7% of the total labor force. Compared to the first half of 2018, the labor force grew by an estimated 3,409 persons, or 7.7%, due largely to an increase in the non-Caymanian labor force by 18%. The Caymanian labor force also grew by 2.6%, while the permanent resident labor force declined by 528 persons, or 12%, compared to spring 2018. The labor force comprised of 46,215 employed persons and 1,407 unemployed persons. Of the employed persons, 20,474 are Caymanians, or 44.3% of total employment. 3,802, or 8.2%, are permanent residents with rights to work, and 21,939, or 47.5%, are non-Caymanians. In comparison to employment as of the first half of 2018, the latest estimates show an increase of 3,498 persons employed, or an 8.2% increase. This growth is traced to the employment growth amongst Caymanians and non-Caymanians, while permanent residents with rights to work employment fell. Mr. Speaker, turning now to the unemployed persons in the labor force, their total number declined by 89 persons, or 6%, compared to spring 2018. The resulting ratio of the unemployed to total labor force, that is, the overall unemployment rate, is 3%. This unemployment rate is one of the lowest for the Cayman Islands since spring of 2007. It is also lower compared to the 3.4% unemployment rate in the spring of 2018. The number of unemployed persons fell across all groups except non-Caymanians, and the majority of the total decline is traced to Caymanians. Unemployment among Caymanians fell by 80 persons, or 7.2%, compared to spring 2018. The spring 2019 Caymanian unemployment rate is 4.8%. This is the second lowest Caymanian unemployment rate since the spring of 2007 and the fall of 2018 reports, which both estimated the Caymanian unemployment at 4.6%. This is also lower than the 5.3% estimated in the spring of 2018. Unemployment among permanent residents with rights to work fell, while non-Caymanians grew compared to spring 2018. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the results of the Labour Force Survey report spring 2019 show the continued strength of the local economy, in particular the private sector, which employs the majority of the labour force. I wish, therefore, to take this opportunity to commend the local business community, including small businesses who contribute to just less than 40% of total employment. It is the government's aim to continue efforts that will permit businesses to grow, that will sustain an improving employment situation for our people. On behalf of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, I also extend our sincere appreciation for all the households across Grand Cayman's 5 districts and those households in the sister islands that participated in the Labour Force Survey, which has helped our islands to have one of the highest response rates in the Caribbean. Mr. Speaker, I commend this report to all honourable members of this House, as it contains a wealth of information with respect to the state of the island's labour market. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Cayman Islands Government Unaudited Quarterly Financial Report, 9-month period ending 30th of September 2019, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this honourable House the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the 9-month period ended the 30th of September 2019.
So ordered. Is the member speaking thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do. Mr. Speaker, the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the period was gazetted on the 8th of November 2019, and all honourable members of the Legislative Assembly were sent this report by email on the 12th of November. Mr. Speaker, the information referred to in this report is based on records obtained from the General Ledger of Government's Financial Management System on the 7th of October 2019. It also is based on representations and judgments provided by the chief officers of ministries, portfolios, offices, and statutory authorities and government companies. Mr. Speaker, all of the amounts that I will refer to from this point onwards will be in Cayman dollars. The Statement of Financial Position at the 30th of September 2019 on page 7 of the document shows that core government ended the period with $2.6 billion in total assets, $1 billion in total liabilities, therefore leaving $1.6 billion in net assets or net worth. Cash and cash equivalents, including fixed deposits with maturity durations not exceeding 90 days, were $88.3 million, and marketable securities comprised of fixed deposits with maturity durations exceeding 90 days were $565.2 million, for a total of $653.5 million with respect to the government's bank account balances. Government, because of the significant balances on hand, we have been placing funds on longer-term fixed deposits, and these longer-term deposits are reflected in marketable securities and are not included in the definition of cash and cash equivalents. The public debt for the core government at September 30th stood at $404 million. This was $25.7 million lower than the debt balance as of the 30th of September 2018. Therefore, core government's debt has been reduced by this amount over the one-year period, and it will continue to be reduced with regularly scheduled principal repayments. The Statement of Financial Performance at page 10 of the document shows that core government earned total operating revenues of $683.1 million and incurred total operating expenditures of $517.8 million. The resulting operating surplus for the core government was $165.3 million. SAGCs contributed an additional $14.7 million to the operating surplus as a result of their favorable performance. The entire public sector has produced an operating surplus of $180 million for the 9-month period ending 30th of September 2019. Mr. Speaker, the revenues recorded for the first 9 months of 2019 were $70.6 million above budgeted expectations. This positive variance was mainly concentrated in the category of coercive revenues, that are revenues received by government by virtue of the coercive powers of certain laws. This type of revenue includes levies on property, an example of which would be stamp duty on land transfers, which was $10.5 million above budget. Import duties, for example, the general category of other import duties was $13.9 million better than budget, and domestic levels on goods and services, including the following examples of revenue items with the following positive variances for the third quarter of 2019. Banks and trust licensing fees were $5.2 million greater than budget. Other company fees, exempted company fees, were $4.3 million, better than budget. Tourist accommodation charges were $5.6 million, in excess of the period's expectations, and partnership fees were $3.3 million greater than the expected revenue for the period. These positive variances from the budget expectations are partially offset by negative variances in other revenue items, such as the provision for continuation of work permit fees for work permit grants, a $4.5 million shortfall, security investment business licenses, a $2.1 million negative variance, and in addition to higher coercive revenues, investment revenues for the period have already surpassed the $4 million anticipated for the entire 2019 financial year at the end of the period. At the end of the period, investment revenue earned amounted to $14.8 million. Mr. Speaker, expenses incurred for the period were lower than budget by $0.7 million. The areas that achieved the largest under expenditure were in the categories of personnel costs and supplies and consumables. Costs relating to personnel for through the third quarter of 2019 amounted to $238.4 million, reflects an underspending of $7.7 million compared to the budget of $246.1 million. This favorable variance is a result of several ministries and portfolios still having vacant posts, which to September 30th, 2019, remain unfilled. Supplies and consumables were lower than projected, producing an underspend of $13.8 million. Within the supplies and consumables classification, the most significant expenditure related to the category of purchases of services, which accounts for 63% or $13.8 million of the overall positive variance in the supplies and consumables classification. Ministries, portfolios, and offices indicate that spending is anticipated to increase in the final quarter, and costs will realign closer to the budgeted projections by the end of the fiscal year. Mr. Speaker, the statement of cash flows on page 15 of the document shows that net cash inflows from our operating activities totaled $170.8 million. The net cash outflows used by investing and financing activities totaled $197.1 million and $15.2 million, respectively. Mr. Speaker, the overall fiscal performance reported for the period shows an entire public sector operating surplus of $180 million, $90 million higher than the budget expectations for the period. This favorable result is due to revenues and expenses performing better than our year-to-date budget projections, coupled with the favorable contributions by our SAGCs. The government's cash position ended the period again at $653.5 million, $253 million higher than anticipated in the 2019 plan and estimates. Mr. Speaker, the performance through the 3 months of 2019 has allowed the government to remain optimistic that it will surpass the 2019 budgeted performance figures that were set in 2017. During the final quarter, ministries, portfolios, offices, statutory authorities, and government companies will all make a final push to outperform the planned 2019 objectives and deliverables. Should planned increases in activity in both operating and capital transactions materialize during the remaining months of 2019, the current operating surplus for core government is forecast to reduce to 80 points. The forecast of current operating surplus for core government of $165.3 million is forecast to reduce to $80.6 million as at the 31st of December 2019. And the forecast $80.6 million for the 2019 financial year for core government would surpass the surplus envisaged by the 2019 original budget of $65.1 million by $15.5 million. Mr. Speaker, The quarterly report that I refer to and have spoken to is available on the Government and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development's website, www.gov.ky and www.mof.gov.ky, respectively. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Annual Report 2018, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for legal affairs.
The Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek the leave of this House to lay on the table the annual report for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for the year 2018.
So ordered is the AG speaking, thereto.
Mr. Speaker, just to say briefly that the report covers the usual areas, four main areas: organizational overview, service delivery, financial performance, and of course, governance. The financials, Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's report is unqualified, and the report sets out the activities of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions for the relevant period, and I certainly would commend the report to honourable members of this House, and to also, Mr. Speaker, use the opportunity to thank and congratulate the hard-working men and women of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions as they continue to do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Portfolio of Legal Affairs, Annual Report 2018, Cayman Islands Government, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for legal affairs.
Honourable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I seek the leave of this House to lay on the table the annual report for 2018 for the portfolio of legal affairs. Mr. Speaker, again, just to say briefly that this report, strategic overview of the areas that falls under the portfolio of legal affairs, the Attorney General's Chambers, Solicitor General's Office, the Legislative Drafting Department, the Law Reform Commission, the Law Revision Department, the Truman Bodden Law School, the Financial Reporting Authority, and Anti-Money Laundering Unit, Mr. Speaker. The report is very comprehensive, sets out the activities of these various departments within the portfolio, and the audit is also unqualified, and I would commend this report to the House and also to use the opportunity to thank the staff, Mr. Speaker, for their dedication and professionalism during the period. Thank you.
Questions to honourable ministers and members of the Cabinet? Statements by honourable ministers and members of the Cabinet? Mike. Personal explanations?
None.
Obituary and other ceremonial speeches?
None.
Raising a matter of privileges?
None.
Government business, bills, continuation of debate on the second reading, appropriation financial years 2020 and 2021, Bill 2019.
The budget debate continues. Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Last call. Does the honorable member from West Bay South,
Georgetown.
West Bay is a good district, but Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I deliver my contribution to the debate, Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate you for 35 years of public service to the people of these islands and indeed to your West Bay constituents. Being a public servant is not an easy task. And Mr. Speaker, as a new member in my only 2.5 years in office as a representative, I know a little bit about what you have given to this country and what sacrifices you have made, because I can now relate to them. So again, Mr. Speaker, thank you for your service. Mr. Speaker, I am once again humbled, honored, and privileged to stand amongst my colleagues in the chamber of this honorable House to offer my contribution to the throne speech, the Premier's budget policy statement, and the Minister for Finance and Economic Development's 2020-2021 budgets. As the elected representative for Georgetown South and Councillor for the Ministry for Education and Youth, I was pleased to hear the Governor lend his support to government's plans to complete the new John Gray High School and my ministry's plans to implement the new primary curriculum and enhanced programs to target young learners, mature students, and those with special needs, with a special emphasis on a purpose-built Sunrise Training Center. I also appreciate the fact that the Governor recognized the national food safety and security policy and strategy that our ministry is producing as a means to increase local agricultural production, which will enhance opportunities for local entrepreneurs to grow small businesses. As for the 2020-2021 budget address, I thank the Honourable Minister for Finance and Economic Development for his contribution. I find it refreshing, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister once again was in the enviable position to confirm to this House and the wider public that our budgets are compliant with the Public Management and Finance Law and the framework for fiscal responsibility. Once again, the Minister, aided by his capable team, have put together a budget that is not only grounded in sound fiscal policy, but also one that delivers on the government's priorities. These priorities include key infrastructure projects, such as the ongoing improvements at the Owen Roberts International Airport, the improvements to our road infrastructure, a new mental health facility, improvements to our school facilities, including a new John Gray High School, the integrated solid waste management project that will, as is often said, fix the dump. I would like to repeat what the Premier said, that there is a major infrastructure project that does not have any money assigned to it in this budget, That is the new cruise berthing and enhanced cargo port facility. That is because it will be built by the preferred bidder, and repayment will come from money received from the per passenger fee that is charged to cruise passengers. There will be no new fee levied by the Port Authority on the residents of these islands to pay for this, Mr. Speaker. Yet we, the people of these islands, will receive huge benefits from both the enlarged cargo and cruise ports over the next 25 years and beyond. But in addition to much needed infrastructure, what this budget also includes is further assistance to Caymanian families, but in particular, assistance to the elderly, our seamen, and their widows, and to those who are most vulnerable in our society. This is a budget that is good for Caymanians, Mr. Speaker. I think it is important that we remember the Honourable Minister of Finance words, and I quote, "We are in that strong position only because of the willingness of this government to put in place the fiscal strategy the country needed, and perhaps more importantly, to stick to it," unquote. I am very pleased, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister of Finance and Economic Development has again confirmed that this government's overriding fiscal strategy is to sustainably manage the government's finances, not only in compliance with the principles of responsible fiscal management, but also by adhering to the tenets of no new fees or taxes levied on the public. Instead, we have removed or reduced several fees and duties to assist families and businesses. No new borrowings, save for the amount of the bullet bond that will be refinanced at much better terms than that was initially in place. Instead, what we have primarily achieved is a further significant overall reduction of government debt over these last two terms. To some, including some in the opposition, it may seem that our government sounds like a broken record because these words have been said over and over again by this and the previous government. But we repeat them because they are necessary for the public to hear and to understand. These guiding principles help to secure our long-term financial position and maintain compliance with the framework for fiscal responsibility as set out in the Public Management and Finance Law. And by letting those principles guide us, we maintain our financial independence and provide confidence to investors, whether from overseas or our very own entrepreneurs, large and small businesses alike. And it is this confidence, underwritten by strong public finances and an equally strong stewardship of the economy, that has allowed this government to obtain the excellent deal that we have with the preferred bidder for the cruise port, as well as the excellent constitutional reforms that the UK have agreed to. The cruise deal helps protect and grow our important cruise business and also provides a necessary cargo port, both vitally important to our future economy. Whilst the Constitution changes provide protections against overreach by the UK, as well as emphasizes the sovereignty of this legislative body with regard to managing our own affairs. I really hope that we in this House today can put aside petty politics and vote yes for the port project and yes for this package of valuable constitutional changes. Both are possibly once in a lifetime, Mr. Speaker, offers that may not return so easily if thrown aside now. And so, yes, it is refreshing, Mr. Speaker, that once again this budget puts government in the position of not having to impose new fees or taxes on the public, but instead we are living within our means. I say it is refreshing because we are setting the example of how to manage a country's affairs. And in doing so, we are, as I have said, helping to stimulate the economy, allowing the people to keep the money they earn to reinvest it in entrepreneurial enterprises or save towards buying a piece of land or a home. Indeed, while some may say that it is not the job of any government to create jobs, it is certainly the role and remit of this unity government, as is the case with any good government, to create a framework that supports and encourages the development of a strong and vibrant business environment. It is one of the ways in which we help our people start and grow their own businesses or to find good, meaningful employment. Mr. Speaker, as Councillor for the Ministry for Finance and Economic Development, I am happy to report to this House some of the achievements of the Honourable Minister for Finance and his ministry over the past budget period. I will leave aside the significant contributions that they have made in bringing the two excellent people-based budgets that they have over this term, Mr. Speaker, but I will come back to this later. I am happy to advise that the Ministry, through the Central Procurement Office, has achieved for government more than $4 million in procurement savings. This has been done through a system of reverse auctions across the entire public sector to purchase various supplies and consumables, including office and pharmaceutical supplies. And there is a further estimated $20 million in savings opportunities expected to be had. To help ensure that the fullest savings opportunities can be had, the Central Procurement Office delivered training on the procurement law and regulations, as well as on the use of the Cayman Islands procurement portal, Bonfire, to over 500 civil servants. 1,900 vendors are now registered on the electronic procurement portal, and over 400 public servants are registered as users of the electronic procurement portal, on which 180 procurement opportunities were advertised. Another significant achievement, Mr. Speaker, was the work done by the Economics and Statistics Office, ESO, to complete the Occupational Wage Survey, OWS 2017. Whilst the report was only completed and released this year, the ESO conducted the survey across all types of establishments from October 2017 to February 2018, and among a sample of households with employees from November 2017 to April 2018. There were 1,270 respondents to the OWS 2017 who supplied the data for 19,215 employees represented in this report. Core government, 3,812. Statutory authorities and government-owned companies, 2,322. Private sector, profit and non-profit, 12,699. And households as employers, 382. The OWS 2017 report presents the basic and total compensation of all employees included in the survey, categorized by 282 occupations, coded according to the International Standard Classification of Occupations, 2008 revision, by industry and by type of employer. Core government, SAGCs, and private sector. It is the work in this important report, Mr. Speaker, that is being used to guide the review of the minimum wage regime. Through the Minister of Finance and Economic Development, the Treasury Department continues to effectively manage historical highs in cash balances held at local banks. The Treasury Department continues to focus on improving the efficiency of cash held for operations, such as reducing the amount of cash held for daily operations, which resulted in more cash being invested in fixed term deposits for a higher return. These efforts resulted in the government having $424 million CI dollars invested at the end of December 2018. The ministry, under the guidance of the minister, is taking the lead in implementing the following governance frameworks. A, performance reporting. They ensure public entities disclose required information in the most clear, defined, and concise way possible by giving management important details using a standardized methodology. It will also increase the reliability of the information, decrease the time to consolidate it, and facilitate rapid analysis for strategic prioritization of any resulting actions. B, internal controls. To enable public entities to establish a proper and effective internal control system. This will allow them to perform their operations in a controlled yet efficient manner, increase the assurance the risk unit has on the effectiveness of their controls, reinforce the ethical culture of the public agency and Cayman Islands government, build trust in the information needed for better decision-making, and accomplish their business objectives in a secure and transparent manner. C, risk management. Will enable public entities to practice strong compliance to policies, procedures established, and regulations that apply. It will also increase the assurance the public entities have on the effectiveness of their controls and will reinforce the ethical culture of the public entities and Cayman Islands government, which in turn translates to better and faster decision-making. D, public-private partnerships, PPPs, and alternative financing will standardize and increase the transparency of the process for implementing PPPs, which will build trust in the process and reduce cost for both private and public parties. In addition, the PPP policies will define what a PPP is, the objectives of the PPP program, the PPP procedures, and the roles and responsibilities of the parties involved. In January last year, Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Postal Service became the first Caribbean postal administration to join the multilateral agreement for exchanging data with other postal administrations worldwide. Another aspect of the Postal Service that we often take for granted, Mr. Speaker, is the stamp releases that are done each year. There was a point in our history when the revenue from stamp issues were an important part of the meager revenues of these islands. That is no longer the case, yet the importance of these stamp issues do still provide income to government, and more importantly, I believe, serve as a reminder of important or historic movements. The stamp issues over the last 2 years include the royal wedding, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, 60th anniversary of the Cayman Islands coat of arms, the 50th anniversary of Cayman Airways, Christmas 2018, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, the Botanic Park definitive, Christmas 2019, and March 2019 royal visit. Mr. Speaker, over the next 2 years, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, for which I have the privilege to serve as Councillor, will continue to provide support and guidance for procurement across all the public service to ensure fairness, competition, transparency, compliance, and ensure value for money in the contract and tender award process for all public expenditure. Next year, the Economics and Statistics Office will conduct the Population and Housing Census, which is the principal measure of the population size and geographic subdivisions, and provide detailed information on the demographic, social, and economic characteristics of the population. There are many other items being addressed by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, all with a view to the most efficient use of government resources for the betterment of our people. Mr. Speaker, the Minister for Finance, like myself, enjoys a good walk for exercise and to clear the mind, and so on several occasions he has expressed to me how proud and pleased that the last administration and this one has been able to complete the much-used South Sound Boardwalk in his constituency of Georgetown East. Many people in and out of his constituency utilize that boardwalk every single day of the week. And, Mr. Speaker, everyone in this island, including the motoring public, will have the undisturbed enjoyment of the beautiful views that will be preserved for future generations to enjoy. And, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Minister of Finance enjoys nature. So I congratulate him and the government on the purchase of the parcel of land in Bel Air in South Sound with a self-contained pond that is a sanctuary for local birds, as well as ducks and turtles. It is also a sanctuary for many of us who visit there with our children and grandchildren to enjoy nature and perhaps throw bits of bread to feed the birds. The Minister can be commended for ensuring that his constituents and the wider public are able to continue to enjoy this small but extremely important bit of nature. Also, Mr. Speaker, a number of tour operators also take their guests to enjoy this park. Mr. Speaker, we have paid careful attention to our duties of stewardship when it comes to budgeting for the various services and programs that government provides for our people and residents. And while the foundation for the good work the Unity government is doing was laid by the previous Progressives-led administration, I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we can all look to the leader of both of these administrations, our Premier, for honing our can-do spirit and keeping us focused on the big picture, improving the lives and lots of our people. Mr. Speaker, Forbes.com says this about a great leader, and I quote, "A great leader possesses a clear vision, is courageous, has integrity, honesty, humility, and clear focus. Great leaders help people reach their goals and are not afraid to hire people that might be better than them and take pride in the accomplishments of those they help along the way," unquote. I do believe that definition fits our Premier quite well. I said at the start of my debate that this budget is good for Caymanians. I will go one step further, Mr. Speaker, and state that the stewardship of Alden McLaughlin as Premier has been good for Caymanians. And it also says much about what the Premier spoke to in his budget policy statement. The goal of this unity government is to finish what we started. Like the Premier, I believe that this budget delivers on the commitments we made by making sure the resources are there to complete the key projects at hand. I spoke broadly about infrastructure earlier, but now wish to focus on a few specific ones. I cannot ignore the traffic woes, and so I am pleased to see the improvements being made to our main road network. When done, these will help calm the frazzled nerves of frustrated commuters. I think all of us in this House and the wider public can commiserate with the lengthy commutes coming into Georgetown in the morning to do our jobs and leaving in the afternoon to get home. And heaven forbid if we have to make a stop at the supermarket or gas station. But once again, Mr. Speaker, this unity government is not shying away to not only owning a problem, but to also finding a solution and fixing the problem for our population now and in the future. We have begun the roadworks and we are determined to finish them. I thank the members of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service for stepping in to help with the routing of traffic at heavy, burdensome times. I believe the traffic will be sorted. It's just going to take time. And is also going to need two other things, Mr. Speaker, one of which is a modern, efficient public transport system. And so I am glad that this budget includes funding to get this project off the ground. In addition, it will require a change in behavior of those who live on these islands. It will not make sense to put in place improved public transport if we still insist on driving cars with one person inside. Using efficient public transport, ride sharing, and yes, walking and cycling when we can, are all part of the overall solution. So I say thanks to the Minister of Finance for his leadership in resolving this issue, including riding his bicycle to work on No Car Day. Another major project, and one that is vital in our country's tourism industry, is the building of the new cruise berthing piers and the enhancement of our cargo port. I have said this earlier, Mr. Speaker, but it is worth repeating and expanding on. I do firmly believe, Mr. Speaker, that this unity government does in fact have a clear mandate to build the piers and enhance the cargo port. The Progressives campaigned on the basis of constructing a cruise port in 2013. And by the time elections rolled around again in 2017, a lot of the groundwork for both the cruise and enhanced cargo port had been substantially advanced. Bearing that in mind, the Progressives' manifesto in the 2017 elections provided greater detail about the nature of the project, including an enhancement of the cargo port facilities. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have a deal with Verdant Isle that doesn't cost this government one thin dime. The deal that government has made with this consortium will not require the government to put up any money. This is worth repeating again and again, Mr. Speaker. There will be no government guarantees and no upfront money. The consortium will be repaid by a portion of the head tax that is charged for each cruise passenger that comes here. We have also allowed significant enhancement to our cargo port with an additional 30,000 square feet of space, including having an additional third berth for our cargo vessels. With this enhancement, we will be better able to manage both cruise and cargo, allowing them to be more efficient with a more pleasant experience for both our cruise visitors and for those who work on the dock. Mr. Speaker, let me inform this House of a few facts that have come directly from the management of our Port Authority regarding the inefficiency of the port. We asked a few questions, and here were the answers received. How will the increase in cargo space improve your operational efficiency and movements to the inland port at night time? And can you now leave empty containers in the yard in the daytime with the increased space? The additional space adds benefit and efficiency in many ways. First, we can hold more empties and loaded units on the dock. This would provide the ability of unloading and loading a vessel during the day if needed, and truck the units at night when there is less traffic on the roads and fewer people in town. The extra space will allow the Port Authority to add 2 more container handling machines on the dock to turn our trucks around quickly and service the cranes more efficiently by removing the containers they unload or feed them the empties to load back. It provides us more operational space for equipment movement. It allows simultaneous operations of container vessels and aggregate or cement. Another question, the new pier is 200 feet by 90 feet and the old pier is 200 feet by 66 feet. How will this assist you to operate the new cranes safely and allow the vehicles to pass behind? The wider pier will allow the larger cranes to work on the pier. The current pier is not wide enough for the larger cranes. The longer pier will allow longer vessels to berth on the south side, providing better work space to unload or load the ship. The south pier is now 400 feet with the additional 200 feet of the pier. We will have 600 feet along the south berth. Another question, just to confirm, can the existing 200 feet by 66 feet pier accommodate the new cranes planned in terms of size and loading? The current pier cannot handle the larger cranes, but can handle the load pressure on the ground. Another question, where are the new cranes planned? When are the new cranes planned? The purchase and arrival of the new cranes has to be timed with the completion of a new cargo facility. Port Authority has them in the forecast for 2023 to 2025. Another question, what is the difference to the existing cranes, i.e. how many TEUs wide can they accommodate? One of the current cranes can do 8 across the loss of lifting capacity. The other crane can do 6 across with a major drop in lifting capacity the further out the reach is. The current cranes are not considered true harbor cranes. They are normal construction cranes modified to handle container ship work. With the new cranes, they are true ship-to-shore mobile harbor cranes that are on tires and designed for this specific type of work. They will have a reach of 15 containers across with no loss of lifting capacity at that distance. Last question, at what point is cargo projected to be at capacity? Since my time with Port Authority, we've had 2 expansions. One was minor with the repair of the original pier, and adding some extra space was projected to provide an additional 10 years. That expansion was right on target. The second expansion was Royal Water Terminal, and that one was projected for 15 years. We're now a little past that and struggling for space. The lack of space causes delays in the vessel operations and availability of the containers for the retailers, importers in Cayman. This proposed expansion should provide us another 10 to 15 years before additional expansion would be required. The continued growth of the Cayman Islands economy, along with continued increase of imports, both in containers and bulk, continues at a steady pace, which contributes to the forecasted capacity. The addition of a third small berth for the barge aggregate cement is a huge improvement, which allows operations of another vessel which cannot be done at this time. Moving that berth out of the way of container operations allows for the simultaneous operations of container vessel and bulk. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Port Authority management also commented that, quote, also talking about the ships currently calling being the right size, the truth is that they have to limit how much load they put in the bow of their ship, as the water is only 12 feet deep on the inner end of our pier, and too much load will result in them grounding. If their load is too great, they only have one option: stay back and we use one crane to discharge some of the containers to decrease the amount of draft, then move them forward where both cranes can continue with the discharge. And we are still limited with the amount of weight and reach that our current cranes can handle. So the time to expand is now before we reach the critical point in the very near future. No one waits until his clothes is 2 sizes too small before acquiring better fitting ones. In the case of our facilities, we are already 1 size too small for the cargo dock and 2 sizes too small for a cruise, unquote. Mr. Speaker, I took the time to go through this because there are people who are wrongly of the view that our current port is just fine and fit for purpose. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, there are those outside this House who are saying that the government cannot be believed with regard to the need for enlarging the cargo port. Well, Mr. Speaker, these are the words of the Port Authority management, the people who truly know. I trust that even if I do not change the minds of the naysayers, that at the very least I have helped the wider public understand the need to improve this important lifeline for all of us who live here. This government does acknowledge there are environmental issues surrounding this project. But I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we have done much to mitigate environmental damage. Firstly, the berthing piers have been redesigned and will go into deeper water, reducing the original dredging by about 30%. I'm also reassured that there will be no dredging in Hogstye Bay, and so Eden Rock will not be impacted given the distance of about 2 football fields away from the closest dredge area. In addition, about $12 million has been set aside to relocate coral that will necessarily have to be removed to allow for construction of the piers. Coral relocation will be done by Polaris Applied Sciences, the same company that has been fixing reefs in Grand Cayman that have been damaged over the years by anchors dragging and ships running aground. 2 new reefs in Georgetown and West Bay has been hugely successful over time, so they know what they are doing. And this work is being backed up by new coral that will be grown and transplanted to areas where coral has been bleached or is in decline. This work will be done by Dr. David Vaughn, who is renowned for his work in this area. So the government and Verdant Isle Group have done and are continuing to do everything we can to mitigate the adverse impact of the project. I do not believe that the Cayman Islands will ever have this opportunity again, Mr. Speaker, to have the facility constructed and the cargo port enhanced without any government funding. The Cayman Islands will retain ownership of the piers, which will be operated by the Port Authority. We are not victims of the cruise industry, Mr. Speaker. We are instead beneficiaries. With this deal, we will have the ability to manage the number of people who actually come to our shores, because the Port Authority will continue to be in charge of that aspect. Another major project that this unity government will see to fruition is, as the Premier said, fixing the dump. Like the Premier, I too have had my moments of hand-wringing, worried that the integrated solid waste management project was on death's door. But my heart has been lightened by information received through our caucus meetings that the dump is indeed being fixed. This country that I am proud to call home will see capping of the existing landfill begin early in the new year. These are indeed exciting times, Mr. Speaker. I am proud to be a part of the government that is finally going to fix the dump, not just for us now, but for generations to come. Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons I take pleasure and pride in being part of this unity government is our government-wide care for Caymanians. We know their wants, their pains, their desires, and their needs. Part of that includes housing. The Premier was right in saying that home ownership is a dream to which all Caymanians aspire. They should be, Mr. Speaker. This is their home. This unit of government stands squarely behind the National Housing Development Trust in building new affordable homes. We believe it is our mandated duty to have in place measures that will bring home ownership within the reach of more Caymanian families, both young and old. This budget does that. We are doing it through stamp duty concessions and the reinvigoration of programs such as the Guaranteed Home Assisted Mortgage and Build on Your Own Property programs. But we know, Mr. Speaker, that not everyone can be a homeowner. Many among us are faced with increasingly high rents and find themselves looking for housing assistance through the Needs Assessment Unit. The Premier touched on the various ways government plans to work and find a way to encourage more supplies of affordable rental units. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, this budget, like those before it, has turned its focus on the vulnerable in our society. I was well pleased to hear the Premier say that this budget addresses a package of concessions to reduce the cost of living on older persons by waiving or reducing duties that affect people older than the age of 65. While these measures will cost government in the long run, we believe in doing the right thing, and this, Mr. Speaker, is the right thing to do for our elders. Part of those who make up our elders are our seafarers, veterans, those in need of social assistance, and long-serving civil service pensioners. The Premier announced, and I wholeheartedly support, increasing the guaranteed minimum income payment to $850 a month beginning in the new year, and $950 a month starting on the 1st of January 2021. I am proud, Mr. Speaker, that we have a leader in the Premier who has insisted upon the course of 2 administrations that the most vulnerable in our communities are supported. Mr. Speaker, a national minimum wage went into effect from the last administration, and it is now time to re-examine the opportunity for an increase in real terms in the national minimum wage. All of us in government look forward to the results of the review of our minimum wage. Our leader, the Premier, has been infectious with his desires to see that minimum wage be reassessed and readdressed. That, Mr. Speaker, is something we are doing under this budget. Mr. Speaker, those of us who have worked with the civil service, both as elected officials and members of the public, have been painfully aware that since austerity measures were introduced, civil servants have not only done without a pay rise, they had one given to them, but yanked out from underneath them. The last administration addressed this inequity, but it still hasn't proven to be enough. I support the Premier's announcement in his budget policy statement that in this budget, government has allowed for a 5% cost of living increase for civil servants beginning at the first of the year. Frankly, Mr. Speaker, I am more than happy this budget has been able to achieve this milestone, and it is the hope of the unity government that the private sector observes what we are doing as a government and follows suit. And while we are taking care of our people financially, we must also focus on a basic need and service of each and every one of us, health care. I believe the Premier was correct when making his budget policy statement. He said that the health care system we have developed in Cayman is becoming unsustainable. I concur that our health insurance costs are hitting us where it hurts the most when it comes to the cost of living in this paradise we call home. Health insurance is expensive for those who can afford it and for those who cannot. It becomes a burden on government. While we are privileged to continually churn out budgets that provide surpluses, that extra money should not be fettered away paying for high health insurance premiums. It is, as my mother would say, throwing good money after bad. As the Premier stated, this is a policy area in which successive governments have failed, but one that needs radical attention. And until the proper solution can be found, we all need to be more mindful of living healthier lifestyles. We need to be proactive about our health, not reactive, relying on physicians and pills to right our unhealthy lifestyles. Mr. Speaker, I have spoken briefly to the Governor's throne speech, the contribution from the Minister for Finance and Economic Development, and the Premier's budget policy statement. Included in them all were items that pertain specifically to what I hold most dear to my role in this unity government, that of the elected representative for Georgetown South and Councillor for the Ministry for Education and Youth. I spoke earlier of major projects that this unity government is determined to finalize before the general election in May 2021. One of those is the completion of the John Gray High School campus. The Premier was right in his budget offering. The John Gray High School project is progressing well, quite well. But by this time next year, the halls of that school should be abuzz with students, faculty, and staff marveling at their new surroundings. The new design of John Gray will provide hugely improved teaching conditions and enable a curriculum model that provides more opportunities for improving performance and increasing engagement, including enhanced information and communication technologies, outdoor sports facilities, practical vocational space, and other world-class facilities for teaching traditional and new skills. These are indeed exciting times for the students, parents, faculty, and staff of John Gray. I am proud that I am part of the government that is seeing this project through. And through this budget, we will see improvements made to our primary schools, most notably an upgraded hall at Bodentown Primary School. Ours is a government that holds education in high regard, and it is our mission to provide the positive learning environments that help nourish our children through quality teaching and learning. Other plans we have in the education arena includes a focus on the provision of the best education opportunities through revision and implementation of the new school curriculum, investment in programs that support improved academic attainment at all levels, and enhanced technical and vocational options to allow students to develop skills and competencies for the world of work. Mr. Speaker, I have always been passionate about the Cayman Islands community, and I am especially honored to serve in the capacity of Councillor for Education and Youth. I am a firm believer that our children and young people are critical to the continued success of our islands. It is their knowledge, experiences, ethics, and compassion that will enable the Cayman Islands to remain a productive and safe country for future generations. As Councillor, I have worked closely with the Honourable Minister for Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands. It has been my pleasure to support the Minister with enhancing the education and youth portfolios within that ministry over the past 2.5 years. Mr. Speaker, I have been honoured to serve as a member of the Education Council with several other prominent community members led by Chairman Mr. Dan Scott. The Council has been able to provide support and advice to the Minister on a range of education matters. It has served as a voice of the community and provide a varied and important perspective on education for persons of all ages. Mr. Speaker, I would like to use this opportunity to share with the public a few of the initiatives supported by the Education Council. Mr. Speaker, in order to understand where we need to go in education, it is important that we continuously monitor and evaluate our progress in both the public and private sectors. The Education Council reviews each school inspection report and has engaged in dialogue with the Office of Education Standards. The Council has supported the school inspections process as well as school improvements efforts from schools as part of the outcome of the inspection process. We note that most government schools have made improvements since the baseline school inspections were conducted in 2014-2015. We look forward to continued positive working relationships with the Ministry and the Department of Education Services for even further improvements. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Scott and I accompanied the Honourable Minister and a team from the Ministry of Education and the Department of Education Services to England in January to observe the national primary curriculum for England being implemented in local schools. The Minister recognized a need to strengthen the curriculum and saw this as an essential component to raising the standard in education for our students. The team focused on early years and primary education, as these are the foundation years for growth and development. Research shows that highly effective teaching and learning at the youngest ages have a substantial impact on future learning. I know the Honourable Minister will be speaking in detail about the implementation of the new curriculum. Therefore, I won't outline too many details, but I wanted to provide this as another example of the working relationship between the Ministry, the Department of Education Services, and the Education Council. This working relationship allows for greater communication, collaboration, and proven results in education. It is a good example of the community working together to support and improve education under the policy direction of the Minister and this coalition government, of which I am proud to be a part of. Mr. Speaker, as a member of Education Council, I also have the remit to review scholarship applications for students who meet criteria for studies locally and abroad. This has truly been an encouraging process as we get to witness firsthand some of Cayman's most outstanding students from public and private schools. We get to see how much they have achieved as well as how much potential they have for the future. It truly is a display of excellence, and I am proud to support the hundreds of Caymanian students who qualify for scholarships each year. I want to continue to encourage them to achieve excellence and return to our shores as leaders and positive change makers. Mr. Speaker, there is so much to celebrate as it relates to our young people. I've had the opportunity to work with the Youth Parliament over the past 2 years, and I continue to be encouraged by the confidence, talent, knowledge, and passion of our young people and how they display their talents. More than 24 students from public and private high school and colleges across the Cayman Islands have begun a half-year training program ahead of the 2020 Youth Parliament, which is held on Commonwealth Day in March of each year. The young participants aged 13 to 17 years are receiving intense coaching from members of the Legislative Assembly, past and present. For the first time, they will also have the benefit of partnerships with the Cayman Islands Youth Assembly and the Cayman Islands Civil Service Toastmasters Association. The Cayman Islands Youth Assembly is a similar group of students coordinated by government's Youth Services Unit, ably led by Youth Services Coordinator Mr. James Miles, that meets during the school year to raise awareness of young people's roles in the community and the social issues that affect them. As part of the process, they typically research and develop 2 discussion papers a year to be shared with government. In 2019-2020, these papers will be produced in tandem with the Youth Parliament and provide a foundation for the Young People's Commonwealth Day debate. Participation in youth parliaments can be a life-changing experience for participants who are keen to take on board every lesson that can be gleaned from the whole process. This can range from preparation to presentation, whether it is basic public speaking or fine-tuning of debating skills and improving persuasion proficiencies. Mr. Speaker, these young people make me proud, and I feel confident in the future leaders that are being developed right here in our Legislative Assembly. I am honored to be a part of that process and to know that I, along with my colleagues, are helping to shape what may very well be future parliamentarians. Mr. Speaker, as Councillor for Education and Youth, I've had the opportunity to attend and support a range of events for young people. Most recently, I attended the University College of the Cayman Islands, UCCI Commencement Ceremony, where 173 students graduated with postgraduate bachelor's and associate degrees. This ceremony also included a number of students who graduated from certificate programs, including those that focused on technical, vocational, education and training, TVET programs. It was again wonderful to see so many of our young people and some of our young at heart walk across the stage, beaming with pride, supported by their loved ones to celebrate the culmination of their hard work. Many of these persons were the first in their families to attain a college degree, Mr. Speaker. Others had worked full-time while studying, and some had to balance taking care of family while attending the university college. It really was a demonstration of commitment to excellence. I would like to take this opportunity to again congratulate the graduates of UCCI on their accomplishments. Mr. Speaker, I have supported other youth development programs, including the Cayman Finance Mentorship Program. This program pairs mentors with high school students and helps to provide insight into one of Cayman's main industries, the finance sector. The team from Cayman Finance does a spectacular job of exposing students to the broad range of careers available from the finance sector, which includes information technology, law, and business, to name a few. Students also get the opportunity to undertake an internship in the summer that provides them with invaluable experiences in the financial sector. Feedback from students has been overwhelmingly positive. Mr. Speaker, I have had the opportunity to support several of the young culinary programs and events. I am blown away sometimes at the level of talent that our young people have as it relates to the culinary arts. I am delighted to see so many of our Caymanian culinary traditions being kept alive and well through our youth. I am also excited to experience some of the creative liberties taken to enhance some of these recipes and to create new takes on some of our favorites like cassava cake. Mr. Speaker, I've also had the opportunity to witness and support our Cadet Corps. We are seeing more and more of their involvement in official events. The discipline and decorum displayed by our young people, male and female, is simply outstanding. They take pride in protocol and procedures and make our ministry, and by extension our country, proud, Mr. Speaker. We are well represented. Mr. Speaker, the past 2.5 years of working with our island's youth has truly been rewarding. Being able to support the development of our future leaders has been a pleasure. I am thankful for the opportunity to serve, and I am proud to be a part of shaping the future of these beloved Cayman Islands. Mr. Speaker, taking care of and educating our children is paramount to this government, as is the nurturing and care of some of the most vulnerable in our society. That is why this budget commits to the building of the new Sunrise Adult Training Facility. This purpose-built facility will significantly enhance the opportunities for training and personal development for up to 150 Caymanians with special needs. The new center will offer a more accessible vocational training program for adults with disabilities for the next 25 years and increase employment and internship placements for these adults through continued partnerships with other government entities and community businesses. It will also foster the continued development of client-made products created in the Sunrise sheltered workshop areas. I am proud to be a part of a government that prioritizes our youth and the most vulnerable in our society, from those with special needs to our elders. It was the last progressive-led administration that enacted the Older Persons Law and set up the Council for Older Persons. Council members, ably led by Ms. Lucille Seymour, champion champion and monitor the promotion and development of programs, projects, and legislative measures, as well as monitor and evaluate the implementation of the action plans for the Cayman Islands Older Persons Policy. Since the Council was formed in 2017, it has met with chief officers having responsibility for health, education, and community affairs, and has held district meetings throughout the islands where presentations were held on the law and policy. Members have also met with several public and private sector entities to advance the well-being of our elders. It is the intention of the Council to cement in the minds of older persons and society in general that there is an entity that champions the cause of older persons with an oversight mandate, and that there is a law and policy that underpins their efforts. The Council now has 4 committees: Education, Autonomy and Independence, Benefits and Partnership, Health and Well-being, and Legal and Social Inclusion. Because of the advocacy and awareness raised by the Council, the following results have been observed for older persons. Parking spaces have been marked, designated lines and queues, reserved seating arrangements in customer service areas, and reduction of fees highlighted in the budget policy statements. The Council and this government take serious our duties to the elderly and all call these beloved isles home. You see, Mr. Speaker, I see myself and my colleagues in this honourable House not as politicians, but as servants. We serve the people. In the words of former American politician Margaret Chase Smith, public service must be more than doing a job efficiently and honestly. It must be a complete dedication to the people and to the nation. Education, youth, and the vulnerable amongst us have always had my interests, and they remain close to my heart.
Honourable Member, do you have much further to go, or you think you will? You want to take a break at this time, or you nearly finished?
Another 5 minutes.
Continue.
Let me just. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Education, youth, and the vulnerable among us have always had my interests, and they remain close to my heart. It is especially my passion for young people and education that spurred me into requesting my work in the Ministry of Education and Youth. I once again thank the Honourable Premier and the Honourable Minister for Education for granting my request. It has been a wonderful 2+ years serving the people of my constituency and the Cayman Islands. As such, I have adopted Red Bay Primary School as my school, and I'm proud to say that I'm the MLA mum for that particular school. I choose Red Bay Primary not only because the students there fall within my catchment area, I represent the catchment area that I represent, but also because I love each and every one of them, as well as the faculty and staff. I'm happy that I will join them next week when they celebrate Reading Week, and I will be happily sporting one of the Reading Day t-shirts that was designed by one of the Year 6 students. Since taking office, I've had the privilege of working with my constituents and in my constituency. Some of the things that I have done over the last 2 years is rename Humberleen to Claude Hill Road with the help of the Minister and Ministry of Lands, developing and launching neighbourhood watch programs, assisting annually with school supplies for children who are in need, the annual Earth Day cleanup to include getting the debris out of the pond in Windsor Park, visiting seniors and others in my constituency and assisting with their needs and concerns, organizing and attending the annual Christmas party in collaboration with the member for Georgetown West for the children of our constituencies, organizing the Christmas luncheon at the Premier's residence for seniors, underbrushing of the property adjacent to Smith Barcadere, working with the Minister of Commerce, Planning and Infrastructure and the National Roads Authority team to install drains, speed bumps, street lights, road repairs and resurfacing of roads to include Oak Mill Street, which is currently being resurfaced. I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Minister Hugh and the team at NRA and Public Works for their hard work, and in particular having to tolerate my persistent nagging. But I have to admit, they respond to my messages and get the job done. I participated in the 6-day acts of service hosted by Celebrate Cayman, where the community joined me in enhancing the Windsor Park Pond with landscaping, working with our community police officer to ensure safety and security for my constituents, working with local civic clubs to help them with various community projects, and partnering with C3 to provide free Wi-Fi for the South Sound Community Centre and Smith Barcadere. For the remainder of this year, I will help launch 2 more Neighbourhood Watch programs, work with a member for Georgetown West in decorating the parks in Windsor Park for Christmas and the lighting of the Christmas tree to include Christmas carols, and work with him to host a family fun day in late December. And of course, Mr. Speaker, throughout the remainder of the term of this unit of government, I will continue to work with my colleagues to ensure our vision and priorities are achieved. Part of that vision is a proposed military regiment for Cayman, which was announced last month. I envision an uptick in membership of the Cayman Islands Cadet Corps with this new regiment. I thank UK Minister of State for the Armed Forces, Mr. Mark Lancaster, the Governor, and our Premier for announcing plans for the regiment, which will be a cooperative venture between the Cayman Islands and the UK, with the UK providing training and equipment. I believe the cadets will benefit from sharing some of the regiment resources such as facilities and equipment. Having a centralized space for both the regiment and the cadets, where resources can be shared, only makes good sense, Mr. Speaker. I do believe this regiment, working with the Cadet Corps, will provide a valuable resource to Cayman and the region when it comes to disaster response. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I repeat that I am humbled, honored, and privileged to have the opportunity to address this honorable House and those we serve. I thank my constituents for their voice and counsel and raising concerns that need to be addressed. Working together, we can come up with solutions and make Georgetown South an even better constituency in which to live, work, and play. The office? Okay. I appreciate and thank our Premier, the Honourable Minister for Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands, the Honourable Minister for Finance and Economic Development, Cabinet and caucus members, their chief officers and their teams for their continued support. I would also like to thank my personal assistant in my constituency office, my MLA office, who stands by me day by day, and she assists me in every aspect when I'm not in the office there. And lastly, but certainly not least, I thank the Ministry of Finance for its excellent work and commitment in producing this highly productive budget. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, we will now suspend until 2:15 for the luncheon break. 2:15.